Hello, welcome to the Wargamer. I'm your host, Rob. Pretty exciting article has just come out from Games Workshop concerning the Cities of Sigmar, the models that you can use in Cities of Sigmar, and also the old world. Now, this is something we expected to happen, and also something I think a lot of people are going to be feeling very emotional about if you ended up with these miniatures or collected these miniatures over the past 8 years of Age of Sigmar. So let's look at the article and talk about what it says. So, I'm obviously joined by the Twitch chat as well. The Cities of Sigmar range announcement. Amid gleaming pennants flapping in the wind, the pounding of drums and rattle of baggage train, Battletome Cities of Sigmar is on the horizon. When it comes to a huge range of new miniatures and units and a host of updated war scrolls to encompass the many existing warriors who make up the battle host of Order. But with this awesome new muster, some certain key changes to the expansive range. Pay attention, troops. This is what you need to know. So there's a picture of these minis. We covered these already. They look great. They're all humans. That's my first takeaway. It's a bit of a shame that we don't have mixed units in here. That would be really, really good. Yeah, it would have been really fun to have seen like mixed races in some of these troops or units, especially because the Cities of Sigmar, as written in the lore, are very cosmopolitan. Lots of mixtures of cultures and races, elves, dwarfs, ogres, and other things all existing. So it would have been fun to have seen that, but we haven't seen that. They're going to be very human. We've now seen a new general, a new infantry, cavalry, and gunners, and even an ogre, a single ogre. While more updated units, including artillery, excited to see that, are on their way to preview article near you. So still more miniatures to come. We also think we're going to see a replacement for the long swords, like a dual-handed weapon, and we think it's going to be like an axe or a halberd. These miniatures were replacing many current models on a like-for-like basis. So your sword and boardsman here that you got up the top will obviously replace Free Guild Guard. Quite a few current units, including the Steam Tankers staying, Celestial Hurricaneum and the Imperial Griffin, will continue their service as part of the Cities of Sigmar. Pretty exciting. Love that. Steam Tank's a great miniature, which is super cool. Celestial Hurricaneum and Imperial Griffin. Someone pointed out recently, I think it's quite fun, especially when you see the new shooting units for Cities of Sigmar, that they've got quite old school types of weapons. And then if you go to Carriage and Overlords, they have like literal machine guns. So the difference between the technology levels is quite fun. I quite like that. But the Hurricaneum will be staying, which also means the Luminarch will be staying, and also the Griffin will be staying. Dwarden and Elves. There's a couple of reasons also for this. We'll talk about that at the end and why they're staying. The old world, I mention it now, the old world, or the setting for the old world, because this is what a lot of this is to do with, the setting for the old world is pre when humans had magic. So they're colleges of magic, and this character represents, because this is from Warhammer Fantasy, this miniature, this represents a time when humans in the old world were able to use magic, and there were colleges of magic dedicated to it. The old world timeline is set at a time when there were no colleges of magic, so this wouldn't fit into the old world, effectively. Dwardens and Elves. As for the other races who make up the armies of the God King, Dwarden Elves still feature in the book, though the focus on the new Battletome is definitely the mortal humans. The same is true of the new miniatures releases. Elves and Dwarden have been well served over the past few years with Battletomes of their own, and it's high time the humble humans put the mortal back into the mortal realms. So their justification for not making new humans and elves in the Cities of Sigmar is that they've already put them in things like Carriage and Overlords, Daughters of Cain, Lumineth Realm Lords. And while I'm not one who's going to be immediately shouting for more elves to be released, I still would have liked to have seen those kits be a little bit more cosmopolitan, but I get what they're doing. Also, that's just a lie, probably. This means that Cities of Sigmar generals will have a lot of options for how they construct their forces. If you like the look of the new mortal humans, you can certainly make them the backbone of your force. If you like the idea of a combined force of elves, Dwarden, and humans, that works too. And if you still field all elven or entirely Dwarden armies, if you like, then you might find your choices somewhat limited. You'll also be able to dip into many other battletomes with some flexible and thematic rules for allies, which will add character and choice to your forces where appropriate. For instance, armies hailing from Tempest Eye can add Carriage and Overlords to their ranks, while Living City can be bolstered by forces of Sylvaneth. So it's going to be nice to returning to all those cities as well and seeing all those allies introduced, which is interesting. And then we've got until units leaving the range. So this is going to be the sad part. I'd like you to know, if you've jumped into this video full of anger and frustration about your miniatures, I understand it. I was there when Warhammer Fantasy Battles exploded, and we had to rebase a lot of our miniatures into rounds, and then I was there when loads of different ranges were like over the past 8 years when they've been put into legends, so you could play them for a little bit at the start of Age of Sigmar, then they got put into legends, or different units got put into legends. I completely agree with you. I understand those feelings. I've lived through those feelings as well, and you've got every right to your upset, your frustration, your anger. The only thing I'd probably say is just to be conscious of where you're putting that. You don't need to put it directly at people. Obviously, this is just a corporation. Corporations are inherently evil because of capitalism, so do please put your anger towards that. And also, those miniatures that you do use will be usable because no one is going to come and police your toys. There will be other people like me. If you want to use your original Frigo Guard as the new Frigo Guard, bro, you and me on the same page. You want to use Shadow Warriors as the handgunners that they've got now, I'm chill with that. You want to use Shadow Warriors as Sentinels in Umbraneth Realm Lords, super fine, okay? I don't care what you use as Sentinels because I hate them, whatever you're using. So just I understand your feelings and I get it, okay? That's all I'm going to say. But understand that your local gaming group and almost everyone is super chill with it, and anyone that isn't chill with it is a real weird dude that you don't want to hang out with. So just be careful. Right. To make way for these new models, inevitably some units will be leaving Warhammer Age Sigmar range. Many of these units aren't gone for good and will in fact be returning in due course under the banner of Warhammer the Old World, as reinforcements for the High Elves, the Wood Elves, and the Empire. If you have any of these classic models in your existing Cities of Sigmar lineup, don't worry. In almost every instance, there's a similar analogue in the battle tome. For example, you could use your Wildwood Rangers, elite elves with two-handed swords, as executioners, elite elves with two-handed swords. This is actually massive. This is massive, and me and the chat were talking about this a minute ago. I personally think that Games Workshop are terrified about the reaction from this. I think that these guys, they recognise that they have really messed around with players' feelings and also with their collections and ranges over the course of several years. You could have had an Empire army and then dutifully rebased it to round, having obviously never thought they would bring back the Old World because they literally destroyed it. They made statements saying it's over, we're not doing it. Then they bring the Old World back and then they go, by the way, those miniatures that you had, they're also out of the mix. Go back and play Old World. You would feel, I think, quite rightly furious, and I think they know that. So this is Games Workshop saying that you can proxy minis, which is pretty bonkers. Like, I very rarely, if have never seen them say this, which is bonkers. So yeah, but I've said bonkers twice, so I'm just going back to Dizzy Rascal days. Okay, there's some really beautiful Cities of Sigmar armies out there in the world that have made great use of the existing range, as well as conversions and inventive paint schemes. And we hate seeing them shelved, so by all means, carry on playing with your miniatures. Just make sure that if you're using older models, which aren't the battle tome, your opponent's clear which unit represent. Again, I've never seen them say that. I've never seen them say that. So that's pretty massive. Here are the models that will soon be leaving Age of Sigmar range, and thus will not be appearing in the new Cities of Sigmar battle tome. Okay, so we've got Frigo General on foot, Frigo Crossbowmen and Handgunners, the Frigo Guard, the Hellbastard Volley Gun and the Hellstorm Rocket Battery, the Frigo Pistoliers and Outriders, Frigo Greatswords, the Demigryph Knights, the Flamespire Phoenix and Frostheart Phoenix, which is mad that that's going away, and then the Phoenix Guard. You definitely could have seen that maybe make its way into Lumineth in some way. Then the Wildwood Rangers and Eternal Guard, the Sisters of Thorn, Wildwood Riders, the Alaroth and the Noble Prince, and then Shadow Warriors and Sisters of Avalon. So the Wood Elves going away is really interesting, because obviously while they will go into the Old World, for Age of Sigmar, that's pretty interesting because we obviously they've expanded out now the Sylvaneth range, and it generally doesn't tend to include Wood Elves. But they might be making way for something like Kerndothi or something, where you have more elf that's a lot more like aggressively wood-based. But that's interesting that that's going away. And they were very new releases just before Age of Sigmar happened. Never really got to see any play. So that could be something that we're seeing there. The High Elves that got continuously squatted have obviously turned into Lumineth Realm Lords. And I wouldn't be surprised if you see something Phoenix-based come out, unless Phoenicium, the city which they're from, ends up getting deleted out of the lore. That'll be interesting as well. And maybe they're going to revisit Phoenicium, and I can definitely see them making the joke that it's been rebirthed in the future. That makes me laugh a lot. No, it doesn't. I'm not. They've also said we'll have more information for Cities of Sigmar very soon. Launch approaches, and keep your spyglasses polished for new old world development diary. Okay, so shout out to Rob in the chat who put this together for me. Let's talk about what stayed, because I think there's some really interesting stuff there. A lot of the Dark Elves have stayed. So what you've kept is Black Ark Corsairs, Blackguard, Dark Riders, Drakespawn Chariots, Drakespawn Knights. These were all brand new releases just before Age of Sigmar came out, like the Wood Elf stuff was. But this stuff has stayed. And the reason this stuff has stayed is I think this is going to be co-opted or used in the Dark Elf range that we're going to see come out from Games Workshop, which is going to be he was Malekith in the old world, but Malarian in the new world, which is exactly what I'm thinking. So I'm going to see the Hydra stays, which has been the Hydra and the Charybdis. I expect that sort of stuff to eventually get used in that Malekith Malarian army as a backbone of that force. Very much like you see with the Daughters of Cain, you saw the Witch Elves and the Sisters Slaughter kept. So that when they added in all of the Snake Ladies, they expanded out that range, which is interesting. So that's a lot of the Dark Elf stuff. They kept also the Dispossessed as well, and there has been a lot of rumours that there's going to be a Grungi range as well. So that would be anything around the Dispossessed. So obviously you've already got Kharadron Overlords and Fire Slayers, but Grungi returning to the Mortal Realms is something that's been alluded to quite a lot. And so again, I would expect to see a lot of the like the Rune Lord and the Jarrabombers, the Gyrocopters, the Hammers and the Iron Drakes, which were all very new sculpts just before Age of Sigmar started, to get moved into that range, because they have the backbone of, they effectively have in here the backbone of two different armies at least. Well, three. They have the humans, and then they have the Dark Elves over on one side, and then the Dispossessed on the other. So while we might not see that this year or next year, I think we're going to see those pushed into those ranges, and then we'll see the Cities of Sigmar range smaller, but it will be all human focused. I think will be the Umbraneth. And we already know the name of the Dark Elves, because Games Workshop accidentally wrote it once on a Warhammer community article. We know that the Dark Elf stuff is called the Umbraneth, which is interesting. So that's it. Anyway, the chat. I'm in the chat right now. I'm streaming with the Twitch chat. They've got some thoughts. Was Dark Elves part of the old world? They were, but they're like so. And there's some other questions that come up because of this. Things like Ardboys in Iron Jaws. How's that going to work? Because you're going to use those definitely in the old world. What's going to happen with them in Age of Sigmar? And I think that's the problem. They've kind of talked themselves into a position where the old world is responsible for these things going away, but that's not true. Because we're going to Beast of Chaos, for example, is a whole army that is in Age of Sigmar, but is getting old world support. So I think there's going to be some interesting stuff around how they do those jewel boxes and how they sell them, which they said they're going to communicate with. This is better than at least the launch of Age of Sigmar, where they did no communication about what was going to help with our miniatures, and they've done this before the kind of information has come out. So I think a lot of this is trying to protect and stimmy backlash, but communication normally does that. So it's good from the game company, but you're going to feel bad that your minis are gone. So I'd love to know what you think. Leave them in the comments below. If you listen to it as a podcast, obviously, shout into the ether, whatever it is, whatever you want to say. And I'm excited to see what everyone says about this and what their thoughts are. My thoughts are that I knew that this would be happening for a long time, not any sort of background information. It's just quite clear that they were going to get rid of these. I think that's true as well. Like, I don't know what the oldest range left is, but I probably wouldn't be buying into it. If you do want to get into Age of Sigmar, or you're thinking about getting into Age of Sigmar, buy into one of the new ranges, like Umbraneth or Kharadron Overlords or Sylvaneth, something that they've produced a lot of miniatures for. Cities of Sigmar are a good example, because those are the miniatures they're going to definitely commit to over the next few years. So, yeah, Skaven. Like, I would not buy any current Skaven. There's no chance. I would have no hope. They might create new clan rats, or maybe they'll make new weapons teams. I don't know, but they might also do something crazy. So, anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think. See you soon.